Live from New Delhi, you are watching DD India, India's voice to the world. I am Deepika Mehto. Coming up in the next hour. Tensions mount in Taiwan Strait as China launches military drills as stern warning to Taiwan.
We are facing the worst wildfire season in our province's history.
Canada's western province of British Columbia declares state of emergency due to wildfires. Evacuation order has been issued. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi addresses G20 meet, pushes to create a secure, trusted and resilient digital economy. Japanese protest in Tokyo over government's decision to release wastewater from Fukushima nuclear plant. China has begun military drills around the island of Taiwan. Beijing officials say that the joint air and sea patrols and military exercises are aimed at testing armed forces' ability to fight in real combat conditions.
A show of force from Beijing. The People's Liberation Army's Eastern Theater Command, which has responsibility for the area around Taiwan, carried out joint naval and air combat exercises. The drills are focusing on ship-to-aircraft coordination and testing forces' actual combat capabilities. Taiwan has also released a video showing its military forces in action after China began the military drills. Strongly condemning the drills, Taiwan's defense ministry has said it would send appropriate forces to retaliate, adding that it has the capability, determination and confidence to maintain national security. Taiwan residents are largely indifferent to the latest drills.
I think it is fine because many drills had happened in the past. The news also kept reporting about Chinese drills near the Taiwan Sea, but I think it is more like a show. It would be quite impossible for China to launch a real attack. Although it is still possible, but it should be quite difficult for it to happen.
China views democratically governed Taiwan as its own territory, despite the strong objections of the island's government. China's military exercises is seen as an angry response to the island's Vice President William Lai's recent visit to the United States. Lai, who is the front-runner in Taiwan's upcoming presidential election, returned from the brief stopover in the United States on Friday.
Now, for more on this, let's speak to DD India correspondent Andrew Wood, who's joining us from Hong Kong. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us here on DD India News Hour. Let's understand more about this latest development. Well, the military drill comes after the successful conclusion of the trilateral meeting. On the other hand, China says exercises are meant to test Chinese military's ability to fight in real combat conditions. So what real combat conditions are we talking about here amidst the growing tensions between US and China over Taiwan?
Well, President Xi Jinping has given the military, the People's Liberation Army, a deadline of 2030 to be able to invade Taiwan if necessary. In the meantime, there's a lot of preparation has to be done. And so the army, the military, has to be practicing all of the time. Now, I'm sure that they have plans to do that anyway. But by changing the date, moving the dates around perhaps of their planned exercises, they can show their displeasure whenever Taiwan does something like where William Lai visiting the United States that makes it look like it's trying to act like more of an independent country, a sovereign country rather than part of China, as Beijing believes. Or for that matter, it's a way of reminding perhaps America, South Korea and Japan, even though they seem to have had quite a successful summit at Camp David, more on military cooperation and other forms of cooperation, that China is still there. China is not going to give up easily.
And how the US is going to react to this, as it is, the US is rather one of Taiwan's strongest international backers and weapon suppliers, Andrew.
Well, by law, Washington has to provide Taiwan with the means to defend itself. Although America does recognize Beijing as being the capital of China, and it believes in one China, or it says that it agrees with the concept of one China, as Beijing wants. It has promised to help Taiwan defend itself, and it has said that the issue of Taiwan has to be sorted out peacefully. So I'm sure, well, I think a lot of people in Taiwan were worried during the war in Ukraine that perhaps America might be too diverted by what was going on with Russia. But President Biden has asked for more authority over the past 6 months or so to give money, to give financial aid, or military aid rather, to Taiwan. And in the past couple of weeks, he's actually given more details of that as well, of what military aid Taiwan can expect. So there is, basically Beijing and Washington are needling each other, I think, to show that neither side is prepared to give ground or to back down.
And in such a case, Andrew, when you said that both of them are needling each other, the packages that the US is proposing, are they really helpful for Taiwan? And when we talk about Taiwan's so-called independence?
Well, Taiwan needs... the awful thing is that the situation that basically continued after the end of the Civil War, for many, many years, nothing really happened. The status quo seemed to suit both Beijing and Taiwan. This pretense that Taiwan was part of China and would be reunited by force, and Taiwan pretending to be what looked like a sovereign nation, but never actually quite asserting that it was. It's since President Xi Jinping came to power that he said that the issue of Taiwan should not be handed down generation to generation. He was going to try and do something about it. And he's made it a very big part, I think, of his political legitimacy to say that he will solve the Taiwanese problem, even if it means perhaps violence. He said that, China reserves the right to use violence if necessary to sort this out. And that's not going to make America particularly happy.
And when we talk about America particularly, as you were just mentioning, and considering the fact that the elections are also around the corner, the 2024 elections are there, and the trilateral meeting also took place, but the internal stakeholders of America are not really happy. How do we see the equation of America within America moving forward?
Well, Reuters and Ipsos published an opinion poll last week asking people in America about how they felt about China and what American politicians should do about it. And the vast majority, more Republicans than Democrats, but still the vast majority of Americans who responded said that the Pentagon should improve its preparedness for war with China, and that they saw that China was a threat and that they would vote for presidential candidates who stood up to China. Unfortunately, though, only 40% of the respondents said they were happy to see American troops stationed in Taiwan to deter or protect or defend Taiwan from an invasion. So there's an interesting thing there that the politicians have got to work out. Stand up to China, but at the same way keep their promises to defend Taiwan.
And this is what the US has also been reiterating time and again. But so, Andrew, many also see this as an angry response to Taiwan from China, as Vice President William Lai's recent stopover in the US. What is your assessment of this?
Well, William Lai spoke too soon. When he came back, he said, look, China hasn't done anything belligerent or hasn't started any exercises showing disapproval of my visit to the United States on my way to and from Paraguay. So he spoke too soon there, and perhaps by annoying Beijing, he actually managed to bring about something that he thought wasn't going to happen, that Beijing decided it had to act decisively, that it had to show it was ready, and it was continuing to prepare for an invasion of Taiwan eventually by 2030, perhaps.
All right. Thank you so much, Andrew, for joining us and bringing us a rounded perspective on the recent development. Well, South Africa is now set to host the 15th edition of the annual BRICS Summit in Johannesburg next week. BRICS represents the groups of major emerging economies made up of Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will represent India and engage with his BRICS counterparts as well. Russian President Vladimir Putin will not attend in person but will join virtually. BRICS nations makes up 41% of the global population and around 24% of global GDP. And joining us on News Hour is Amritpal Singh. Thank you so much, Amritpal, for joining us here. Well, when we talk about BRICS over the years, BRICS has emerged as one of the strongest grouping, stronger than other alliances, as we've been hearing. Now, what are the reasons for it as more and more nations are expressing their intention to join BRICS and also considering the geopolitical tensions that we are witnessing right now, Amrit?
Deepika, as you gave the figures, a large chunk of the population lives in these countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Then they contribute a significant part to the global GDP. So clearly, therefore, this grouping draws its strength from that. Also, if you leave out Russia, if you look at the other countries, they're primarily countries of the global south. It is a grouping which is a non-Western bloc, which controls a very significant part of the world trade, of the world, a significant part of the world population lives in these countries, a significant part of the businesses emerge from here. As I said, the global, they contribute and are a part of, contribute significantly to the global GDP, and therefore their voice becomes very, very important and dominant in the rest of the world. When these leaders meet, they sit up and look and decide and, intently watch what decisions that they take, because the decisions that they take are not just restricted to the members of this grouping, but have a global impact, so to speak. And as you rightly said, more and more countries have expressed their intent to join. That will be, in fact, one of the talking points at this meeting here in Johannesburg in South Africa, when the leaders meet on the 22nd, 3rd and 4th. The leaders would be looking at whether to expand BRICS, if there is a consensus that could happen. If there is no consensus, because it's a consensual organization, they can keep it as a part of the later agenda for BRICS summits later to follow. But clearly, these countries representing almost all continents of the world, apart from, say, North America. If you leave out North America, Russia is in Europe as well. Part of Russia is in Europe as well. So, countries from different parts of the world, geographically also coming together and thus taking important decisions which have a global impact and significance. Deepika.
And Amrit, when we talk about Indian Prime Minister representing India at the BRICS, before that, Prime Minister Narendra Modi also held a phone call with Iran's president, and he talked about his upcoming meeting and also stressed on the Chabahar port. What do you think when we talk about both the Indian Prime Minister's meeting with Iran's president and when we talk about Chabahar port, how important this meeting is?
Well, the Chabahar port, phone call between the Prime Minister and his Iranian counterpart is very, very significant, because Iran has expressed keen desire to join the BRICS. India is open to, expansion of the BRICS, has no opposition to the idea of expansion, but Iran, being a dominant player in the region, is, of course, a very, very important member. And Chabahar, as you know, is very important for Indian access to Central Asia, to Afghanistan, and through that to Central Asia, because that part of the world is landlocked. And, via land route, you either have to go through Pakistan, given our tensions with Pakistan. The other route is through the Chabahar port, which is an Iranian port. The Indians have been very interested in it for a very, very long time, and in fact do use that port. And after that, the roads to Delaware in Afghanistan and further up to Kabul and through that to Central Asia. So it will be a sea and a land route, and therefore it is an important route for India, strategically speaking, and also from a trade point of view. So this phone call is absolutely important, and coming before the Prime Minister embarks on the BRICS visit assumes even more significance, Deepika.
And apart from these, this particular meeting, what all other bilateral meetings are there on the agenda when we talk about Indian Prime Minister?
Well, they haven't officially announced, Deepika, the bilateral meetings, but I understand the Prime Minister will be having about 6 to 7 bilateral meetings, of course, so with the visiting heads of government or state of the BRICS countries, but also with the other invitee countries that South Africa has invited here. Primarily, putting forth, of course, the priorities of India further, but also using this opportunity both at the multilateral, that's at BRICS, and during his bilateral meetings to, brief the world leaders. India, as it's, goes into the G20 summit approaching next month. How India wishes to approach that, because that would have a global significance. And as you earlier said, that disruption of global supply chains due to the conflict between Ukraine and Russia continues to dominate the world agenda. So that could come up for discussions. Well, if the meeting with the Chinese President Xi Jinping happens, the Prime Minister could reiterate the Indian stand of that the importance of getting the border peaceful and getting to normalize the border for normalization of larger relations between India and China. Remember, the Prime Minister had a brief meeting or exchanged pleasantries during his at the G20 summit in Bali. It could be an opportunity for the two leaders to meet again in person, and obviously.
Right, Amrit, thank you so much for joining us and bringing us those important details about the BRICS summit and what are the meetings that we are looking forward to when we talk about Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's representation over there at the BRICS summit in South Africa. Now, still to come on DD India News Hour, US, South Korea and Japan agree to deepen military ties at Trilateral Leaders Summit at Camp David. West African bloc says it is ready for military intervention in Niger if an order is given.
We are taking up the theme of the Indo-Pacific, a construct that has come of age in recent years and has become very central and defining feature to politics and international relations in Asia and beyond.
You can't help but be impressed by the level of ambition and visibility that India has taken up in the last decade or so in terms of its engagement in broader regional proposals and architecture. As you said, a key pivotal member of the Quad. And my sense also in the Quad that India has been one of the members that has actually pushed it to take on some of these broader goals, to take on some of these international public goods rather than just being focused on a harder security agenda.
Welcome back after that short break. You're watching DD India News Hour. I am Deepika Mehta. Well, the leaders of the US, South Korea and Japan agreed to elevate cooperation between their countries during a trilateral meeting at President Joe Biden's retreat, Camp David. In a joint statement, the three countries committed to consult promptly with each other during the crisis and also to coordinate responses to regional challenges and threats affecting common interests. The three nations also agreed to hold trilateral military training exercises annually and to share real-time information on North Korean missile launches by the end of 2023.
We're doubling down on information sharing, including on the DPRK's missile launches and cyber activities, strengthening our ballistic missile defense cooperation, and critically, we've all committed to swiftly consult with each other in response to threats to any one of our countries from whatever source it occurs.
Korea, the United States and Japan, in their pursuit of Indo-Pacific strategies, oppose any unilateral attempts to change the status quo by force. Respect for sovereignty, territorial integrity, the peaceful settlement of disputes, amongst other, undergird a rule-based international order that we resolve to safeguard by intensifying our collaboration as part of such endeavors. The unilateral attempts to change the status quo by force in the East and South China Sea are continuing, and the nuclear and missile threats of North Korea is only becoming ever larger under such circumstances.
DD India correspondent Caroline Malone has more from Washington, D.C.
It was an unprecedented day at Camp David, the US leader's diplomatic retreat reserved for events of the highest importance. South Korea's President Yoon and Japan's Prime Minister Kishida agreeing to new levels of cooperation with President Biden to set up a hotline and commit to consulting each other on issues of importance. Of particular concern to all three leaders, as referenced in a joint statement, is China's dangerous and aggressive actions in the South China Sea and continued ballistic missile testing from North Korea. It took a long time to get to this point, with South Korea and Japan only recently able to resolve issues stemming from Tokyo's military occupation of its neighbour in the early 20th century. Going forward, the three leaders have agreed to hold trilateral meetings annually to share information on ballistic missile defence and new economic and energy security initiatives, including warnings on supply chain disruptions. US officials say it's not a formal defence alliance and not about excluding other nations, but this unusually united front between Japan, South Korea and the US may act as a deterrent to future provocation in the Indo-Pacific. Caroline Malone in Washington for DD India.
Army chiefs of the West African bloc have agreed to an undisclosed D-Day or designated day when they say they will intervene to restore peace in Niger. It follows a coup last month with a military junta now in control of the country. The ECOWAS bloc has a standby force ready for possible military intervention if diplomatic efforts fail. And now I am joined by DD India correspondent from Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining us here on DD India News Hour. What do we understand and what is the latest that we are having when we talk about this D-Day which has been designated?
Well, we are aware that this two-day meeting amongst ECOWAS leaders, it concluded looking at details of how they would go into Niger if need be and what kind of force they would have. In essence, they got all the commitments that they needed to be able to go in there. Initially, there were about 3 countries, Nigeria, Benin, and Senegal, that had committed about 5,000 troops to go into Niger. But now that number has gone up to 11 countries within the ECOWAS that are ready to go into Niger. And so the D-Day, as stated, is still undisclosed. How they will go in is still undisclosed, but what they have also said is that this weekend they intend to pursue further dialogue with the military junta there to see if they can make any headway. And this weekend they had planned to send a diplomatic mission there to see if they can talk to the military junta there to see if they can reach some sort of agreement. And if that doesn't go through, then the military intervention that is planned then that will follow.
Would the ECOWAS still face any legal or political hurdle when they talk about the designated D-Day, which is undisclosed?
Well, there are definitely some legal hurdles that ECOWAS has to deal with. For example, Nigeria, which is seen as the leader of ECOWAS at the moment, not only just because they are chairing the seat of ECOWAS, but there are some serious legal hurdles that they have to overcome. Their Senate recently said that they do not endorse military intervention in Niger and would rather prefer diplomatic efforts to be increased. So that in itself presents a problem. I believe that it is the same case for a number of other countries in West Africa to be able to send military personnel into Niger. But it's not just that, there is also an aspect of the fact that the military junta there, particularly the leader there, Abdurrahman Chiani, he was once the battalion commander for an ECOWAS team that went into Ivory Coast in 2003. And so he understands how much time it takes for the mobilization of troops to get into Niger. And I believe this is somehow emboldening him and the statements that they've been making of late. And so it won't be as easy as ECOWAS seems to put it forth. But also ECOWAS has to win also the hearts and minds of people in Niger, because what the military junta there has been able to do is to convince them that siding with France and perhaps the US is tantamount to foreign intervention in their country, and therefore they are opposed to any move by ECOWAS to come into the country. And at this point, it's not very clear whether people in Niger are for the military junta or against it, but this is another front that ECOWAS has to look at before it makes any military intervention in Niger.
We've been tracing the development for all our viewers, and we've been also been learning that ECOWAS earlier wanted to maintain peace, and now they've announced this undisclosed D-Day, another attempt to stabilize the situation, but so far success has not been witnessed. Now, what is it that ECOWAS actually needs to do right now, apart from announcing this undisclosed D-Day?
Well, it's a very difficult question to answer because there's so many moving parts. There is, of course, the conundrum that ECOWAS is in. If it goes in, there's a threat of flaring up a conflict that it does not want to have within ECOWAS, within the West African region. But at the same time, if they don't go in and restore constitutional order, this particular area is rather volatile and has been dealing with jihadists who want to take over. And so because of those moving parts, there's so many moving parts, the fact that people in Niger don't want French intervention or French influence there's so many moving parts that ECOWAS really has to be careful. It was hoping that diplomatic efforts would have been able to yield results, but until now, these have not been able to yield anything. The diplomatic mission that was sent in the beginning, it didn't work out. Any attempts to reach out there haven't worked out. On the other hand, those close to the military junta, there are some analyst activists there in Niger are saying that unless ECOWAS recognizes the military junta there, they will not budge and they will not be able to dialogue and reach some sort of agreement. So to answer your question, it's a very difficult question to answer. It requires a lot of tact to be able to achieve any results.
All right. Thank you so much, Isaac, for joining us and bringing us those very important details on the current situation in Niger. And now it's time to take a look at other stories which are making news. Well, the total number of Jan Dhan accounts have now crossed the 50 crore mark. The Finance Ministry said out of these accounts, 56% of accounts belong to women and 67% of accounts have been opened in rural and semi-urban areas. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has also expressed happiness over the significant milestone in Jan Dhan accounts. In a social media post, Prime Minister Narendra Modi expressed his delight at women holding more than half of these accounts at 56%. He said, and I quote him here, with 67% of accounts opened in rural and semi-urban areas, the government is also ensuring that the benefits of financial inclusion they should reach every corner of our nation, unquote. The Supreme Court of India has swiftly formed a special bench of Justices P.V. Nagratna and Ujjal Bhuyan to hear 25-year-old rape survivors' abortion appeal after Gujarat High Court adjourned the matter multiple times. The new Supreme Court bench has ordered fresh medical report of the applicant to be submitted by the 20th of August. Bangladesh says it looks forward to working with India to fulfill its aim of achieving smart Bangladesh using the digital future-ready technology. Now, speaking to DD India, Bangladesh's State Minister for ICT Division, Zunaid Palak, said India's leadership has displayed that G20 countries can work towards sustainable and resilient economy.
The Digital Economy Ministers meet is underway at Bangalore, the IT city of India, and it is here Prime Minister Narendra Modi virtually addressed the ministers from the G20 countries, and he stressed upon the importance of building a strong digital public infrastructure and also cyber security. And most of the G20 nations are in alignment with this idea, and they look forward to working together. To talk more about what is the outcome, what could be the outcome and the expectation from this meet, I have with me Zunaid Ahmed Palak, who is the State Minister for ICT Division, that is Information Communication Technology Division from Bangladesh.
What Honorable Prime Minister Modi mentioned in his inaugural speech, that we need to develop digital public infrastructure, not only to provide government services to the citizens, but also to make our services more transparent and accountable to all of our countries. And secondly, when we can see that how digital public infrastructures are become so crucial for each and every countries in the world, and then the digital security is a big concern for each of every nation in the world. And that is why I think that we need to act collaboratively and globally, because it is not an issue what can be addressed by a single country.
So how does this matter when we talk about upskilling and we talk about human resources, as you mentioned? India has, its own ecosystem in information technology. So how does Bangladesh look at, working together?
Our father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujib, said our foreign policy would be friendship to all, malice to none. And India is our time-tested, long-time friend, and who supported us in our liberation war and dedicated their lives and supported us for a long time. And we are working with the Indian government. We are taking line of credit to develop our high-tech parks and also exchanging our startups. Okay. Recently, in presence of Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, we inaugurated India-Bangladesh Startup Bridge, okay. And we are having huge investment from Indian investors in our tech startups.
Okay. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has also been talking about, when he talks about technology, when he talks about inclusion, he talks of Global South. Yeah. So how does, working, this voice as a Global South help in Bangladesh, and also the presidency that India has displayed for this G20?
I think by organizing this G20 summit in India under the presidency of India, we have seen that what kind of leadership capacity India has achieved so far, and we are really thankful for the leadership of India. They have created that environment, that opportunity for all of the other countries, all the member countries of G20, and also guest countries like us, and we had the opportunity to exchange and our views and knowledge, and under the presidency of India, I'm really hopeful that G20 will work more in the field of digital economy.
Thank you very much for talking to us. Thank you, Zunaid.
For having me.
That was Minister Zunaid from Bangladesh talking about aspiring Bangladesh and a smart Bangladesh target, and working with India will ultimately take the dreams of the nations working together and attain sustainable and inclusive growth through digital economy. With cameraman Chandra Kumar, Aisha Khanam, DD News, Bangalore.
We are moving for a short break, but still to come on DD India News Hour. Protests in Japan against the government decision to release Fukushima wastewater continue. And British Columbia declares state of emergency as wildfires tear through the region. Welcome back after that short break. You're watching DD India News Hour. I am Deepika Mehta. Well, let's quickly take a recap first. So tensions are mounting in Taiwan Strait as China launches military drills as stern warning to Taiwan. Canada's western province of British Columbia declares state of emergency due to wildfires. Evacuation order have been issued. India's Prime Minister addresses G20 meet, pushing for secure, trusted and resilient digital economy. Canada continue battling deadly wildfires, with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau saying the federal government will actively contribute to help the communities rebuild. It is the country's worst ever wildfire season.
The federal government is there with significant military assets. We're coordinating the air evacuations. We're making sure that we're there to respond to all the needs of community now, and will be there in the coming months and years as we look to keep people safe moving forward, even as we rebuild in places where there are terrible losses. The number of people who've been evacuated, who've been taking these incredibly long drives to get to safety, doing it in a thoughtful, orderly way, being there to help out each other and look out for each other, is really the best of not just what Canada is, but particularly people who live in the north, where the sense of community and looking out for each other is truly extraordinary.
Meanwhile, British Columbia has declared a state of emergency and has also ordered 15,000 people to be evacuated.
Right now, we are facing the worst wildfire season in our province's history. This unprecedented situation has come to a head this evening. In just the last 24 hours, the situation has evolved and deteriorated quite rapidly. In just the last hour, we've gone from about 4,500 homes under evacuation to about 15,000 homes, families being evacuated from their homes across the province.
Experts say climate change has exacerbated wildfire problems, leading to bad air quality and climbing temperatures. Wildfires are not unusual in Canada's western provinces, but this year, the eastern provinces have witnessed extreme fires, resulting to hot weather. Japan is hoping it can now begin its controversial plan to discharge treated radioactive water into the Pacific Ocean. Tokyo needs to dispose of more than 1 million tons of water used to cool the wrecked Daiichi nuclear power plant at Fukushima, and also reports suggest it may start doing so as soon as this month. Chris Gilbert reports from Tokyo.
Well, Japan is hoping that this trilateral summit is the last bridge it needs to cross to begin the discharge of treated water into the Pacific Ocean. It has the support of the IAEA, the rubber stamp from the International Atomic Watchdog, which says that the plan is up to international safety standards. It has spoken to the fishers in Fukushima who have suffered brand damage since the meltdown and are concerned about the ongoing impact of the water discharge. It has taken its pitch to the Pacific Island Forum, all the countries there that are concerned about the discharge, trying to soothe those ruffled feathers with messages of how safe the water is. And finally, there's South Korea, a country which still maintains a ban on food imports from Fukushima, a country which still sees mass protests frequently against the discharge project, but yet a country which at the executive level, at the presidential level, has recently warmed ties with at least the government of Japan and Fumio Kishida, the Prime Minister. This is good news for the US. It wants these two countries working together, despite all the bad blood that they share, going all the way back to Japan's at times very brutal rule of the Korean Peninsula, all the way up to World War II. This has been a sticking point for previous administrations. It is not a sticking point for this administration. It is not for Washington to get the two of them working together to meet its interests in the Indo-Pacific region before administrations change and the whole thing may come undone. Chris Gilbert in Tokyo, reporting for DD India.
In Japan, people are protesting to oppose the government's decision to release wastewater from the Fukushima nuclear plant. Protesters gathered in front of the Japanese Prime Minister's office, carrying placards and banners. Protesters also demanded the government to reverse the plan and handed a copy of written petition to a Japanese upper house lawmaker and a representative of Tokyo Electric Power Company. Japan says it will remove most radioactive elements from the water except for tritium, a hydrogen isotope that must be diluted because it is difficult to filter. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the G20 Digital Economy Ministerial meeting via a video message. He said more than 45% of global real-time payments happen in India.
Our unique digital identity platform Aadhaar covers more than 1.3 billion of our people. We have used the power of the GEM Trinity, Jan Dhan bank accounts, Aadhaar and mobile to revolutionize financial inclusion in India. Every month, nearly 10 billion transactions take place on UPI, our instant payment system. More than 45% of the global real-time payments happen in India. Direct benefit transfer of government support is plugging leakages and has saved over $33 billion. The CoWIN portal supported India's COVID vaccination drive. It helped in the delivery of over 2 billion vaccine doses along with digitally verifiable certificates.
The Indian Prime Minister also emphasized on building consensus on the G20 high-level principles for a secure, trusted and resilient digital economy.
I also welcome your efforts to develop a roadmap to facilitate cross-country comparison of digital skills and to set up a virtual center of excellence on digital skilling. These are important efforts to meet the needs of our workforce which is future ready. As the digital economy spreads globally, it will face security threats and challenges. In this context, it is important to build consensus on the G20 high-level principles for a secure, trusted, and resilient digital economy.
At the G20 Digital Economy Ministerial meeting, delegates are considering a draft declaration. Ministers from G20 nations are meeting in the southern city of Bengaluru. The Digital Economy Group also offers inspiration and broad guidance to policymakers on harnessing the digital potential of economies. India, along with the World Health Organization, is launching the global initiative on digital health today. Now, it comes as part of a joint meeting of health and finance ministers in the western state of Gujarat. It is the culmination of discussions of the task force meetings held during the G20 India presidency. The health ministers' meeting in Gandhinagar began with a yoga session. Delegates performed yoga and meditation. A number of side events are being held during the summit, including one on traditional medicine. Delegations from more than 80 countries and health ministers from 31 countries are taking part in this particular summit. One delegate from Germany praised India's G20 presidency and the role of the health working group.
I have been here for the 4th time now here in India, as we were here for all the health working groups, and we've had a wonderful time. The Indian presidency and our Indian colleagues have done a fantastic job at greeting us here, and yeah, we're very interested in the 3 priorities India has set, and Lav has done an incredible job, our chief negotiator, in making everyone feel at home. So we're looking forward to the ministerial now. Thank you so much.
And now at DD India News Hour, let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. Switzerland is facing a shortage of essential medicines. Supply issues have stemmed from a smaller market size, increased import costs on raw materials, and the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Switzerland is home to the world's largest pharmaceutical companies as well as hundreds of biotech businesses. China has become the world's largest ship owner in terms of gross tonnage. According to the latest data from Clarkson Research, a world-renowned shipping research institution, the fleet held by Chinese ship owners has reached a total of 249.2 million gross tons in displacement, accounting for 15.9% of the world market. The Philippine Armed Forces said on Saturday it would once again seek to resupply troops stationed in a rusty World War II era ship on a reef in the South China Sea after China blocked a previous attempt with water cannons. Manila filed a diplomatic protest against Beijing this month after China's Coast Guard used water cannon and dangerous moves to prevent the Philippines from sending supplies to a handful of troops in the second Thomas Schwal. And now time to give you some business-related updates. Lamborghini has unveiled its new Lanzador e-vehicle. It is the luxury sports car manufacturer's first all-electric car. Well, the Lanzador will be the 4th Lamborghini in series production. Lamborghini had introduced the Revuelto, a replacement for the iconic Aventador that is powered by a V12 plug-in hybrid.
What if it were true?
What if tomorrow a Lamborghini like this could become a reality? Lamborghini Lanzador.
SoftBank Group Corp has acquired 25% stake in the British chip designer company called ARM Limited from its Vision Fund unit that values the chip designer at $64 billion. Details of the transaction will be unveiled on Monday when ARM makes the filing for its successful stock market debut in public. Still to come on DD India News Hour. Sweden beat Australia to secure third place playoff title. Australia's Victoria State to pay $380 million to Commonwealth Games organisers.
Namaste India.
Namaste land.
Marhaban ila al-Hind.
Zari India.
Salam India. Namaste India.
Namaskar Bharata.
Mui
Nous
India.
sommes l'Inde.
Nahnu Hunud. India. Ma Hindi Hasti. Mung Hindian.
Salam Hindustan.
We are India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I am Deepika Mehto. And it's now time for some sporting action. And joining me right now is Ollie Barrett, straight from the studios, who's going to talk about the FIFA Women's World Cup. Thank you so much, Ollie, for joining us here on DD India News Hour. First of all, let's talk about the big victory that we are talking about right now. Sweden have won the game.
They have indeed. One goal in either half for Sweden means that Australia couldn't put on that final victory for their home fans that they wanted to. It was a penalty in the first half after a VAR decision, video assistant referee getting involved, and then a stunning strike from Kosovari Aslani in the 62nd minute of the second half, which, as I say, means that the Australian fans didn't have that final victory to end the tournament that they've been co-hosting that they wanted, but they certainly gave their team a send-off nonetheless. It's been record-breaking in Australia in terms of television audiences. It's been record-breaking in terms of crowds at the stadia as well in Australia. Sam Kerr, though, perhaps the best player in women's world football, not making a huge impact on this game. She did make an impact in the semi-final as Australia lost, but Sam Kerr doesn't like losing, and in this game she did.
And now let's quickly tell our viewers on how it all happened. So Sweden, they beat Australia to finish third at the Women's World Cup. Kosovar Aslani's stunning second half strike sealed the victory for Sweden as they rifed into a shot from the edge of the area to add to Fridolina Rolfö's first half penalty, as Sweden eventually won the bronze medal match for the second World Cup in succession. So despite the defeat, this represents co-host Australia's best ever World Cup finish, as their efforts in this tournament have captured the hearts of the fans in green and gold, but the Matildas were unable to end on a high note. Now, Rolfö's penalty gave Peter side the lead after a video assistant referee check confirmed that Claire Hunt had clipped Stina in the box after 26 minutes. And on the other, Mark Blackstenius played a superb square ball to Aslani, who struck in a first-time shot to double their lead. And Spain women will now take on England women in the FIFA Women's World Cup final on Sunday, the 20th of August. Spain and England are contending for the first ever title clash. Both the teams have been impressive in the tournament, but Spain are obviously the surprise package this time. With their previous best record being a round of 16 finish, reaching the final was historic for the team. La Roja have built much confidence since the start and will likely stick to their brand of football when they face Team England. Their ability to build from the back and sophisticated passing patterns could break England's long ball style. England could become just the second team after Germany in 2003 and 2007 to win Women's World Cup as reigning European champions. So, Ollie, we are talking now about the finals between England and Spain. It was really tough to even imagine that Spain would make it to the finals.
It really was. You talked about them being a surprise package because they haven't got this far before, but they're also a surprise package because of a tumultuous build-up to this tournament in which there were player revolts. There are a number of Spain's best players that simply aren't at the tournament because they weren't selected to be there and didn't want to play for the coach, Jorge Vilda. Now, he's been talking ahead of the game about how he believes that this will be a tactical match against England. Serena Wiegmann has been talking about how she thinks it's all going to play out. We've been hearing from the England captain, Millie Bright, today saying that England will have to play the game of our lives if they're going to win. I can tell you that I've just got here from London, and I can tell you that in London there is a great deal of expectation building all across England as well ahead of this game, but also some interesting political things to pick up on. Bit of a row about whether Prince William should be travelling to Australia as in his role as president of the Football Association. He's not going. There will be Spanish royalty at the game. In contrast, also some questions about whether Prime Minister Rishi Sunak should be turning up for this game as well. But despite those political rows, as I say, huge excitement building in England ahead of this match, as of course there will be in Spain as well.
This is a game of fans, and fans play a very crucial role when we talk about such big finale. There are emotions, Spain reaching for the first time, and at the same time England is also there. Australia has been knocked out. What do you think, how important and how much of a key role the fans are going to play over here in this crucial encounter?
Well, one of the interesting things, of course, for England is that they came through a semi-final in which the Australians had far more fans in the stadium than they did. So that will be a different atmosphere for the English team in this final. Certainly Spain will be well supported as well. And of course, back in Spain, back in England, we are expecting huge television audiences to be watching these matches. I think that's one of the ways in which the organisers feel that this tournament has been a huge success. It's been sellout crowds in the stadia, but also huge television audiences all across the world.
And if we talk about both the teams, Spain and England, which team currently looks stronger?
I think both teams will feel that they've got enough to win this game. You were talking about how they play quite different styles, and it will be, as Jorge Vilda has described it, I think a tactical match is what he says he is expecting. England have shown that they can really deal with various different challenges throughout this tournament. They've dealt with whatever has been thrown at them with some very different teams that they've played against. And as I say, Spain have really shown that togetherness despite the difficult build-up that they had to this tournament, and they play that intricate game of football with lots of possession and lots of passing. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out in that final on
But
Sunday.
England fans are very much confident that the trophy is coming back home.
Football's coming home. That's what the refrain is in England at the moment, and people will be gathering in pubs and bars and restaurants despite the fact that it's a morning kick-off UK time. Huge crowds expected to be heading to places like pubs and bars and restaurants to try and watch the football with friends and family and fellow England supporters. The excitement really has been building to a crescendo point to that climax for Sunday's match.
All right, thank you so much, Ollie, for joining us and bringing us that rounded perspective on the super finale between Spain and England at the FIFA Women's World Cup. Thank you so much. Now, FIFA chief Gianni Infantino said on Friday the Women's World Cup had generated more than $570 million in revenue and also enabled soccer's global governing body to break even despite raising the prize purse tenfold compared to the 2015 edition. Carlos Alcaraz was forced to endure 3 sets for the third match in a row at the Cincinnati Open as he clinched a semi-final spot after beating Max Purcell. The Wimbledon champion and world #1 triumphed by 4-6, 6-3, 6-4 on Friday in a 2-hour-long clash with the Australian qualifier. The victory now means they are two away from his third ATP 1000 title of the season after winning at Indian Wells and in Madrid earlier this year. Now, Alcaraz will face Hubert Hurkacz in the next round after the Pole avoided an embarrassing turn of events to come through against Alexei Popyrin. Second seed Novak Djokovic also advanced to the last fours of the Cincinnati Masters. Djokovic beat American Taylor Fritz by 6-0, 6-4 at the Lindner Tennis Family Center today. Djokovic will face German Alexander Zverev in the next round. In women's singles category, number 2 seed Aryna Sabalenka got past 5th seed Ons Jabeur by 7-5, 6-3 to make it to the semi-finals for the second straight year. Jabeur got treatment on her right foot during the second test and also struggled after that. Sabalenka will face Karolina Muchova, who advanced when Mary Boskova retired from a right thigh injury. In another women's singles clash, number 7 seed Coco Gauff of the United States moved into the Western and Southern Open semi-finals for the first time with a 6-3, 6-2 victory over Italian qualifier Jasmine Paolini. Gauff eased past world number 43 Paolini in 1 hour and 12 minutes. Gauff is the only American woman to make it into the singles quarterfinals on home soil this week. In the semi-finals, Gauff will face world number 1 Iga Swiatek today. And for the first time since the Second World War, the Commonwealth Games in 2026 may not happen as the Australian host city, Victoria, has pulled out, citing a projected cost blowout. Victoria Premier Daniel Andrews say the Australian state will pay $243 million to the Commonwealth Games organisers.
Unavoidable, and for the best of reasons, it's simply not possible for us to be able to host these games in 2026, not without incurring enormous costs that far outweigh the benefits of these games. But I can confirm a final settlement, $380 million, not a dollar more, no court action. The matter is closed out and finalised.
And that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram. We will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I am Deepika Mehta from all of us here in Delhi. Thank you so much for watching DD India News Hour.